having just turned 40, and then somebody who had just turned 60 would come up and say, "Shut the hell up about turning 40. This is not something that you need to talk about." So I stopped complaining about my age. But here's the thing. I think because I'm a millennial, I look through the perspective of people in my generation, people who want to be able to afford the American dream of homeownership in the United States of America, and it's becoming more and more unavailable thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. We can do so much better. I think with Donald Trump as president, we're going to unleash a golden age of prosperity and make homeownership affordable again for the people of Nevada and the people of the United States of America. And we got to talk about both sides of this, because the reason housing is so expensive is because there's too little houses being built and there are too many illegal aliens in this country going after homes that ought by rights go to American citizens. Let's talk about both. Let's talk about both of those problems. So first of all, why do we make it so hard to build in the United States of America? Think about this. Our grandparents went to the moon with pocket calculators and slide rules, and under Kamala Harris's leadership, she's made it so hard that we're not building enough homes for the people who live in the United States of America. The regulations are ridiculous. The regulations on our energy sector have made it more expensive to build homes, because when you make energy more expensive, you're going to make home building more expensive too. And I think especially in the state of Nevada, we've got a ton of federal land. It's not being used for a national park. It's not being used for anything. Why don't we build some homes on that land and give the American citizens a place to live in their own country? But here's the other thing. We got to be honest about this. It's not just that we're not building enough homes. It's also that there are way too many people in the United States of America who should not be here. And look, a lot of them are good people. I'm not mad at anybody for wanting to come to the United States of America. I am mad at Kamala Harris for opening the border and making the American dream unaffordable for American citizens. Because you got to think, when you bring in 25 million illegal aliens, you got to put them somewhere. And sometimes, by the way, they're getting put up in five-star hotels at taxpayer expense. That's what Kamala Harris's border has done. But it also means that they're going in homes that ought by right belong to the United States citizens, the people who built this country. And here's a very simple principle that Donald Trump will follow in the White House to make the American dream of homeownership more affordable again. American homes for the American people, not for illegal aliens who don't deserve to be in this country in the first place. And you know what really bothers me about Kamala Harris? It's not just that she's wrong on the public policy. It's not just that she wants to give housing and Medicare and Social Security to illegal aliens. And by the way, what gall she has to accuse us of wanting to go after Social Security and Medicare when she has explicitly proposed giving Medicare to illegal aliens. If you do that, you will bankrupt that program and throw a generation of our own citizens into poverty. Donald Trump is going to fight to protect Medicare and Social Security by making sure it goes to the people who paid into it, not to the people who don't belong in this country. But we've got to be honest about where we are and how to make this country and our own people more prosperous. Because you're not going to do it with an American leader who doesn't put the interests of our citizens first. And not only that, again, I disagree with her on so many issues. We could talk for the next 3 hours about all the things that Kamala Harris is wrong about. But the thing that bothers me the most about Kamala Harris and her ridiculous campaign is not just that she disagrees with us on public policy. It's that she wants to censor you and silence you instead of persuading you. And that is a violation. That is a violation of the First Amendment, the most sacred right that we have as American citizens. And if you don't want to persuade your citizens, if you want to silence your fellow citizens, if you want to trample on the First Amendment, you got to get the hell away from the White House. You don't belong there. Let's protect the rights of American citizens to speak their mind. And we see this in so many ways, friends. We see it with big tech censoring people. Remember a few years ago where if you suggested that it was ridiculous to make a 3-year-old wear a mask, you could be kicked off of social media. We see it with the technology companies trying to silence stories that are bad for the Democrats in the run-up to the last election and to this one. And you see it when Kamala Harris, when we complain about Kamala Harris's border policy, when we talk about Kamala Harris's immigration policy, she dares to call the citizens of her own country racist and bad people. We are not racist for wanting to secure the border. We want to secure the border because we love this country, we love its people, and we want to keep it safe. Think about the campaign that she's running, and I'm going to make just a couple more observations here, and then I'll take some questions from the reporters. Think about the campaign that she's running and how completely without substance it is. I mean, if I'm a swing voter, I'm a person who hasn't quite made up my mind whether I'm going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. I think that you should be insulted. You should feel insulted by the way that Kamala Harris is running this campaign. Because the American people, they want an actual idea for how to make their country more prosperous and how their government is going to make their lives better. So they asked Kamala Harris, how are you going to address the terrible housing and grocery affordability problem that your policies caused? And Kamala Harris will say, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. Or you know, they'll say, well, okay, a lot of Americans are frustrated because under your policies, the amount of fentanyl that's come into our country has skyrocketed. How are you going to secure that southern border? How are you going to do something different than what you've been doing for the last 4 years? And she'll say, you know, when I worked at McDonald's, I made the hash browns, and I was very good at it. And by the way, I don't even know if that's true. I think Donald Trump may have worked at McDonald's for longer than Kamala Harris at this point. I don't know. I mean, maybe she's telling the truth about it, maybe not, but she seems to lie about half the things that she says, so I don't know. Trust but verify, I guess, is my approach to it. But he was good at it, too. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I've noticed this in a lot of her interviews now, where they'll say, well, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to solve the problems, again, that were caused in some cases by your policies? And she can't talk about details. She can't talk about substance. She can't offer any idea. What she'll do is she'll talk about Donald Trump. You would have thought that Donald Trump would be president for the past 3.5 years because every single time they point out one of Kamala Harris's failures, she tries to blame it on Donald Trump. But a person who's doing that, a person who has no substance, a person who has no agenda, a person who can only speak in slogans instead of answering a question, doesn't belong anywhere near the Oval Office of the United States of America. And if you are a citizen of our country, look, you might agree or disagree with something that I say. You might agree or disagree with what Donald Trump says. But we believe that to run for president and vice president of the United States, you ought to get out there and try to persuade your fellow citizens. Don't lie to them. Don't repeat these ridiculous slogans, and don't run from your own citizens. And sure as hell, don't censor them. Go out and persuade them. And that ultimately is the biggest difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Donald Trump may disagree with you on an issue. You may disagree with him. But he will fight for your right to speak your mind, because this is the United States of America, and we're allowed to say what we want in our own country. So I'd ask anybody who's undecided, whether you're in this crowd or you're watching at home, compare just the conduct of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris over the past few weeks, and know that the same person who's terrified to answer a difficult question, the same person who repeats the same ridiculous slogans, do we really want that person, Kamala Harris, negotiating on behalf of this country with world leaders? Do we want Kamala Harris answering the phone call at 2 a.m. when there's a terrible emergency? No. We want competence, we want intelligent leadership, we want courage under fire, and I think for all of us that means Donald J. Trump has got to get back in the White House. All righty, one final point here, and then I want to kick it over to the press to ask some questions. Here's the thing. As much as I think we're going to win, and I know the great GOP chair said this earlier, as much as I believe that we are going to win, not just the state of Nevada, but the whole country, we're only going to win if you all get out there and vote. And it's very simple. And I'll tell you, as somebody, I don't like election season, I prefer election day, but as our great president said, Donald Trump, it is what it is, okay? We are now in a world where the Democrats are using every method they can. Kamala Harris's campaign is using every method they can. They're using mail, they're using early voting, they're using election day voting. So Republicans, we've got to play by the same rules and get our people out to vote however we possibly can. So let's get out there and vote early. Let's get out there and vote by mail. Let's get out there and vote however makes the most sense. And not just you, but I want to make a request of you. In fact, I'm going to make 3 requests of you. Number 1, I want you to vote, every single person in this audience, I want you to vote 10 times. There'll be a headline in CNN tomorrow. J.D. Vance encourages voter fraud in Nevada. I want you to vote 10 times the legal way, and here's how you do it. You get yourself to the polls, you get 9 friends and family to join you. That is the legal way to vote 10 times. Because let me give you a little insight. Let me give you a little insight into the way the campaign thinks about this. Is it's very simple. The people who always vote, they're always going to vote, okay? It sounds simple, but the people who vote every election, they're going to show up no matter how much we persuade one direction or another. And of course, a lot of those people are Democrats and a lot of those people are Republicans. Where the election is going to be decided is the people who don't always show up to vote. And that's not going to happen. They're not going to get to the polls unless we're out there working to try to get them to the polls. That is what you all can do. You can be force multipliers for the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign is not just me going around and giving speeches and talking to reporters, and it's not the president going and doing these rallies. It's all of us together fighting to save the country, and what we need from you is to get your friends and family to the polls. On that topic, the second thing I'm going to ask you to do, whether now when I'm taking questions from reporters, afterwards take a selfie, take a photo of me up here, just get out there and post, whether it's on social media, text message, email, use whatever method of communication you use, and talk to people about why you're voting for Donald Trump. It's very simple. If we get out there and we talk about why we're voting for Donald Trump, and 100 of our friends see it, or 1,000 of our friends see it, that's the way that we become a force multiplier and win this campaign in Nevada and everywhere else. So number 2, talk about why you're voting for Donald Trump. That's the second request. And here's the third request. There's a website that we've built that helps you check your registration. It helps you check where your polling location is. You can make sure your registration is up to date. You can also find information about how to get involved in our voter turnout efforts. And I'm going to repeat it, but it's swampthevoteusa.com, okay? Swampthevoteusa.com, because as President Trump says, the only way we're going to win is to swamp that vote. Get out there, make your voice heard, make your friends and neighbors' voices heard, and we're going to take this country back, my friends. We got 13 days to do it. God bless you all. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for having me. I love this city and I love this state. God bless you. righty. We're not done quite yet here. Let's just take a few questions from reporters before we have to hit the road.
Hello, good afternoon,
right.
Senator. My name is Leslie. I'm a reporter, local reporter with Univision Nevada. My question to you is, how do you plan to balance loyalty to the presidential nominee's agenda with pursuing your own policy priorities or areas of expertise?
Sure. Well, first, somebody just shouted something out, and I'm not going to respond to every person who shouts something out, but I want to respond to this one because it's a good point. Title IX. We need to preserve the right of girls to compete against other girls and not biological men. And for so many folks out there, I mean, you look at the coalition that Donald Trump has assembled. We've got on the right people like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. We've got, of course, the president and me, and then we've got people like Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard. And you ask, how do you get that coalition together under the same tent? And it's very simple. It's common sense. If you believe that children ought to be educated and not indoctrinated at schools, if you believe that we ought to have a closed southern border, if you believe that in sports boys should compete against boys and girls should compete against girls, that's common sense. And that's all we stand for. You don't have to agree with us on every issue, but let's cut out the craziness in our politics and get back to common sense. And that's Donald J. Trump's leadership. Now, you asked how to balance, obviously loyalty to the president because he's going to be the president in just a few short months, president-elect in a couple weeks. How to balance that with my own agenda. Look, my own agenda is the agenda that's best for the American people, and that is Donald J. Trump's agenda, because he's going to fight for the American working people every single day. Now, of course, you're going to have disagreements from time to time. My job is to offer the president the wisest counsel that I can, to be honest with him about my opinion, but ultimately, the president of the United States is going to make decisions, and he's going to make very good decisions for the American people. That's why I'm thrilled to be here. That's why I'm thrilled to support him. One thing I say, you talk about loyalty to Donald Trump. Look, I love Donald Trump, and I am very loyal to Donald Trump. But I think I speak for President Trump. I speak for myself. Loyalty first to the American people. That's why I like Donald Trump, is because he's loyal to the American people. And it sounds so common sense, and it sounds so obvious, but when you've got a vice president, Kamala Harris, who's opened the American southern border, who's given free health care benefits to illegal aliens, can we just get back to a president who cares about the citizens of his own country? That is the responsibility of an American leader, and that's why I'm supporting Donald Trump, because he actually cares about the people who built this country, and he's fighting for their future, not the future of people who don't belong in this country in the first place. Next question.
Senator Vance, thank you for taking questions, first of all. Actually,
you're welcome.
Taking questions. Back in May, Senate Democrats failed to carry forward the bipartisan security bill. You were among the senators who voted to filibuster it. Chuck Schumer said Donald Trump was trying to pressure Republicans to vote against it in order to campaign on border chaos. My question to you, sir, is what was actually in that security bill that you had policy disagreements with?
That's a good question, and actually, I mean, you guys have way better reporters here than most of the national media, because because the question wasn't just Kamala Harris propaganda. Look, the reason, first of all, the idea that Donald Trump killed that bill is totally false. I was in the negotiations. I was talking to my colleagues. The reason that bill was killed is because it was a disaster for border security. It was a bad bill. Here are three things that would have done. First of all, it would have given the ability to grant asylum without any hearing to the most liberal bureaucrats in the entire country. You want to have an open border, you give liberal bureaucrats the ability to wave a magic wand and give amnesty to millions upon millions of people. And not just that, but it would have been impossible for the president to change it. Because once that's written into law, you can never go back. It codified catch and release, in other words, and that is a disaster for the American people. Number two, that bill contemplated giving legal status to 2 million illegal aliens every single year. What kind of a border security bill gives legal status to 2 million people per year? That's a disgrace. That's not a border security bill. That's a Kamala Harris open borders bill, and I'm glad that we destroyed that bill because it was bad for the American people. And here's the final thing. That bill did nothing. The biggest scam in Kamala Harris's open border is what's called parole. And forgive me for getting in the weeds a little bit, but it's important to understand when somebody comes to this country, the president and the vice president have the ability to, on a case-by-case basis, waive our immigration laws, okay? It's supposed to be used sparingly. It's supposed to be used, again, on a one-by-one basis. Kamala Harris has granted parole to millions upon millions of people who have no right to be in the United States of America. Any border security bill that doesn't prevent that from happening is not a border security bill, and that's why that bill was a disaster for the people of Nevada and all across our country. Let's do a couple more questions.
Thank you for taking our questions, Senator Vance. I'm Ben Marjat with News 4 and Fox 11 here in Reno. If elected, what specifically would you do to prevent transgender women from playing in women's sports? Because in Nevada, the University of Reno's Reno's president, a Republican, we might add, says that it's against the Nevada Constitution to forfeit a game for reasons related to gender identity.
Well, so here's the problem here, is that you have to make clear that Title IX protects the interests of our young girls instead of facilitating the destruction of girls' sports. That's all you have to do. Title IX. Now, maybe we have to amend the law, or maybe it's just a matter of enforcement, but we've got to make clear that Title IX protects the rights of our young girls to compete against young girls. It's that simple. And this is, I mean, look, this is a public safety issue, especially with contact sports. I'm the father of a 2-year-old daughter. I don't want my little girl to grow up to compete in sports and then to get bludgeoned by a man. That's disgusting. It's disgraceful. It can't happen in the United States of America. I want her to build confidence. I want her to learn teamwork. I want to learn about the give and take of sports. That's why we think it's so important for our young girls to participate in sports. But in the name of a far left, lunatic, progressive idea, we are destroying girls' sports in this country. It's going to have ramifications far beyond just athletic competition. So I think that's the big thing, is Title IX, and there are all of these weird and frankly sick little ways in which the Harris administration has put pressure on local school districts to comply with their interpretation of some of these approaches. For example, this hasn't gotten too much media coverage, but it is, I think, one of the worst scandals. Is early on in the Kamala Harris administration, they threatened to take free and reduced lunch money away from local school districts unless those local school districts allowed men to compete in girls' sports. Now, but just think about that. Think about that. We're going to take food away from the mouths of our poor children because a local school district wants to protect girls' sports. That is a disgusting thing to do to our people, and it's going to stop when Donald Trump is president. But it's so odd to me that the national media never asks Kamala Harris, do you agree with taking food from the mouths of poor children if they don't agree with your radical trans ideology? Why have they asked her that? Why hasn't she been forced to answer a single question about literally trying to take food from our poor kids? I grew up in a family where we often struggled to put food on the table. I am so glad that when I was growing up in this country, Democrats and Republicans believed we ought to feed our children and not use them as political weapons for radical ideas. Next question.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for taking our questions. You've been asked before about changing some of your positions about Donald Trump. And in 2020, you had done a direct message on Twitter saying that Trump has thoroughly failed to deliver on his economic populism. So what has changed in your view regarding that?
Well, first of all, on my past criticisms of Donald Trump, you know who remembers those criticisms better than anybody is Donald J. Trump. In fact, I remember when the media, when Biden was still the nominee, and the media tried to attack Donald Trump and say, well, you know, both of these candidates sometimes struggle with memory issues. And it was just so unbelievably dishonest because Donald Trump remembers what I said about him on July 9th, 2015 at 8:32 a.m. to the word. And he busts my chops about it. But look, what I've said, and frankly, I'm speaking mostly to swing voters, is when Donald Trump was running for president, I bought into a lot of the media lies about him. You know, and once you get to know the guy, and once you realize that the media is saying dishonest things about him and his record, you realize, one, you can't trust the national press, but two, Donald Trump's a pretty damn good guy, and he did a very, very good job as President of the United States. Now, you ask about economic policy from the perspective of 2020. First of all, Donald Trump's economic record speaks for itself. Sky-high wages, low inflation, a secure southern border, a safer country for Americans. He was a very, very good president, and he's going to do it again if the people in Nevada give him another opportunity to be their president, and I believe that they will. But you talk about a direct message. I mean, I've said this publicly. I think that one of the biggest problems of the first Trump administration, again, I thought he did a great job, but the biggest problem of the first Trump administration is you had congressional Democrats who were obsessed with impeaching him, and sometimes, let's be honest, even some Republicans who weren't fully on board for the pro-worker agenda of Donald Trump. That is the fault of the establishment in this country. And here's a big, and there's no bigger person who exemplifies that establishment better than Kamala Harris. Because one of the most important issues that Donald Trump has run on is he said, look, if the Chinese are going to try to steal our manufacturing jobs, and they're going to use slave labor to manufacture stuff in China, if they want to bring that crap back into the United States of America, we're going to slap a big fat tariff to protect American workers and to protect American industries. Now that is a really, really important thing, but honestly, congressional representatives were fighting President Trump on that every single day. And so, by the way, is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has the audacity to say that Donald Trump is going to cause inflation when she's been causing inflation for 4 years, and when he was president, inflation was 1.5%. It's unbelievable. But one of the things that I'm really excited about with the next Trump administration is that, frankly, we've got a lot more people in the U.S. Congress, and we're going to add Sam Brown to their ranks. We're adding people who recognize that the only way to protect the American middle class is to stop countries like China from stealing our industrial base, and we are going to do it bigger and better than we did even in the first Trump administration. Next question.
Thank you. Thank you for taking our questions. Nevada's economy relies heavily on tourism. The
Sure.
Biden administration proposed cracking down on junk fees, including resort fees. Would a Trump-Vance administration seek to also end resort fees?
Well, ma'am, I appreciate the question. That's something that we haven't talked about between me and the president. I don't want to speak for him until I talk to him, but I'll talk to him and get you a good question. I mean, look, we believe in fairness for American consumers. We think that people, of course, can charge what they want to charge, but they ought to be honest with the American citizenry about what they're charging. It's very simple, right? We also believe that we can have openness, price transparency, not just in the tourism industry, but in the pharmaceutical industry, by the way. A lot of people have no idea what they're buying. We believe in price transparency across our entire economy, but we believe that price transparency can coexist with a thriving tourism industry in the state of Nevada and everywhere else. I mean, look, I love to come here. It's great to come to Nevada. Your weather's a hell of a lot better, especially in the winter, than our weather is in the state of Ohio. We are going to be the best fighters for the Nevada tourism industry that you've ever seen in the White House. And the biggest part of that, of course, is to make sure that Nevada workers are not paying taxes on tips and not being harassed by IRS bureaucrats. That's our best proposal to help the workers of the Nevada tourism industry. Let's do one more question.
Senator Vance, thank you for taking questions. Nick Doyle here covering it with ABC News. Unfortunately, we've seen
He's not
Please
that
let me
bad.
finish.
Come on.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nick.
Unfortunately, we've seen 2 assassination attempts on the former President Donald Trump.
That's right.
Why is it that you would be fit to run this country?
Well, first of all, let me tell you a little story. When Donald Trump, after the second assassination attempt, I was sitting at home in Cincinnati with my son. We were sitting on the couch, just me and my 7-year-old, and I get a call, and this is well before the news had become public, but President Trump says, JD, man, they tried to do it again. I said, what'd they try to do again? And he said, they tried to assassinate me again. And of course, at first, my initial thought goes to just his safety. And I'm like, sir, my God, I'm so sorry that happened. Are you doing okay? And of course, he's physically okay or wouldn't be calling me. But somebody tried to shoot him a second time, just kind of asking, how you doing? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm kind of pissed off, though, because I was about to make a birdie on the 6th hole, and the Secret Service wouldn't let me finish. And, yeah, it was really funny, but then I realized that it actually revealed something very important about his character, which is we want a president who shows courage under fire. We want a president who can take a literal assassination attempt in stride and still go about doing his job every single day. We do not need a president who hides from everything but softball interviews and wants to censor her fellow citizens. We want Donald J. Trump because he's got courage under fire. And that's an underrated quality by our media, but Donald Trump has it in spades. It's why he did such a good job the first time and will do a very good job the second time, too. Now, look, you asked me, why am I ready? Well, first of all, the question is not whether the media says I'm ready. The question is whether the American people, they're the ones who determine the president and vice president. And look, I'm proud to be an outsider to American politics. I've been a United States Senator. I've also been a businessman who's created jobs. I was a United States Marine Corps who served my country and went to Iraq when I was asked. And most of all, I've got something. I've got something that we have in spades in this room, and we unfortunately have none of in the White House, which is common sense. That's what we most need in American leaders. So what I'd say is, look, I try to be a humble guy. I think the presidency is, of course, such a big job. I feel extremely confident. I mean, hell, Donald Trump is healthier than I am. So I feel extremely confident that Donald Trump is going to serve and serve well for 4 years for the American people. And I'm going to help him, and we're going to make America great again, and we're going to do it together. So, on that note, let me leave you with a couple of final thoughts here. And I'm sorry to have to leave, but we've got to hit the road. I think that we're headed to either Michigan or North Carolina tomorrow. We're going to have maybe both, maybe more than that. But here.